Happy Monday. Happy Broncos Victory Monday in the Mile High sports world. Welcome to the Colorado Prep Show presented by UPSWING. I'm the editor-in-chief of Colorado Prep, Dan Mohrmann. Along with me, as always, is the editor-in-chief of Mile High Sports Magazine, Doug Ottewill. Doug, we're not in our usual spots today. No. We're on assignment, as our late friend Irv Brown would say. We are live just off the number 2 green at Eagle Ranch Golf Course, where the Class 3A state golf tournament is in full swing. We're gonna go through the show. We're gonna go out and join the kids and see if we can if they can play better than you and I did yesterday, Doug.
I don't think that'll be very hard, and they're qualified, so
That's right. A full regular season. We got to play with a couple of outstanding young men from Wheat Ridge High School yesterday. So best of luck to both Jack and Evan as they pursue a state golf title. And Doug, speaking of just doing things well, the Denver Broncos did some things very well yesterday, and it made me want to revisit the fine work that we did for the football issue of Mile High Sports Magazine. Just a fantastic Broncos content across the board. I think we should start updating our tracker of how we think Bo Nix is going to do, because some of us are going to turn out to be more right. Some of us are going to turn out to be more wrong. And of course, who can forget the high school football players that are on the upswing? A fantastic section that we put together, and we'll be talking about a couple of those kids here in a few minutes. One of them, Brooklyn Bailey, had himself a game on Friday night at Mountain Vista, in Mountain Vista's win over Valor.
Yeah, I mean, that was a must-see TV. What a thrilling game, and yeah, he definitely kind of stood out. I mean, just one of those guys you can't take your eyes off watching everything that he does on the football field.
Yep. So we'll get all to that here in just a minute. But as we begin every show, we talk about what's on our upswing in the high school sports world. Dougie, I'm going to kick it off, and I'm just going to tell you I'm throwing in the towel. I give up. I give up trying to figure out 3A football. It's an utter mess every week. The only consistent has been Windsor staying atop the rankings. They're probably the only undefeated team left in that top 5. I know there's always a straggler or two that we might not be taking into account. I don't have those numbers right in front of me. I'm rolling with one screen while we're on assignment. But Holy Family gets a big win over Meade. Meade is the team that I have pegged going back to that 3A title game. Of course, Thompson Valley suffered an earlier loss to Timnath. Roosevelt has been dealt a couple of losses at the hands of, I believe it was Meade and Holy Family, but then Holy Family turns around and loses to Pueblo East, who has lost to Pueblo South, who has lost to Pueblo County. It's a mess. I give up. We're just going to enjoy the ride as we get going. Doug, how about your upswing?
I think we like to call that parody, Dan. It reminds me a little bit of the NFL, just like in 3A Colorado high school football. But yeah, there's some good teams. I just think any one of those could win, but my upswing is going to go toward another team that we talked about a little bit more early in the season, and we've kind of quieted down on them of late. But the Fairview Knights, and I think they come in at number 7 on our Colorado Preps rankings, they're a team that I can't really wait to watch in the playoffs. They've really only had one test on the year. They played A West, and it was a thriller. It was a 1-point game, if memory serves. So they're right there because Arvada West is a top 4, top 3 team with us, has been for the majority of the season. So they're a very, very good team, and Fairview went toe to toe with them, just kind of one of those who had the ball last kind of situations. So Fairview has not really had a test since then. And I don't know, in looking at their schedule, if they have what I would consider a real test, throughout the rest of the season. But every time you look at them, they're hanging 50 on someone. They beat Prairie View 56-0 this last week. So their scores jump off the page, but they haven't quite played, the competition that, say, a Mountain Vista or a Valor has. So it's really hard to gauge them, but I can't wait to watch Fairview, who I think will make a lot of noise come time for the playoffs.
And of course, they're led by an outstanding quarterback, Key Ellison, who you can find in the pages of Mile High Sports Magazine this month. So just another one in the line of those Tom McCartney quarterbacks that just continue to chuck the ball all over the yard and put up just numbers that make you want to go out and watch a team like the Knights. So, of course, we're about to bring in our friend Jermaine Stafford from UPSWING, but in thinking about the high school football action that we dealt with over the weekend, Doug, I saw so much speed in that Mountain Vista Valor game. And when I look at a kid like Brooklyn Bailey, it makes me think of UPSWING's indoor track and how it's just built for young athletes to push their limits and chase their goals. Once they're done with their speed training, weight training, whatever it is, they can jump right over to the cold plunge, sauna, and compression therapy that are all designed to help you young athletes train safely and perform at their best. And it all sounds expensive, but I'll tell you what, for many kids, UPSWING is a scholarship-friendly program. And when a young athlete earns an UPSWING scholarship, it can be the first step toward breaking their personal records and achieving new levels of athletic performance like we are seeing from some of the best football players, girls volleyball players, softball players, all those athletes from across the state. And with that, we say good Monday to our friend Jermaine Stafford, who, while everyone's on location, it looks like our guy is once again on location at that very facility that we can't get enough of.
Hey, how's it going, Dan and Doug? Thank you for bringing me back in. I'm glad you didn't invite me over there to join you guys there at the course. I only have 20 balls left for the season and don't want to lose those. So I'll be happy to sit right where I am today.
I can attest it can happen here. There's a lot of native, and I tend to just go to the native.
Absolutely.
Well, and not only that, I walked out this morning, went for my usual morning run. And what did I do? The first thing on the grass right outside the facility where we're staying, stepped on a golf ball. Someone lost an errant shot left of the number 2 fairway, came a little too close to the quarters for comfort, but no damage done. And Jermaine, I mean, you could have 21 right there if you were with us today. But let's get into it, guys. We had just another outstanding weekend of high school football action. Jermaine, I meant to text you on Friday night to ask if you were in the facility when Valor Christian was taking on Mountain Vista. It seems like that would be your kind of style of game to see.
Yeah, I actually watched it live. We had our Alpha series here this past weekend where we were very delighted to have another young group of individuals join us on our Friday Night Lights in our Alpha series. Something outside of sports, right? It's the who for all students and not just the what they are. So wasn't present. I watched it live. I rewatched it. And once again, Brooklyn Bailey is just a star, right? And I had the honor to talk to him at halftime of that Arapahoe game. You remember he was knocked out of that game. It was a questionable hit, kind of a late hit in which it wasn't a dirty hit at all. It was one of those hits that happen in football and they took him out because they thought he had a concussion. And I remember talking to him over to the sideline, consoling him because, as you know, I watched the game from far away, and he happens to be over there by, the locker room. And he said, the only way they can stop me is putting me out of a game. And he wasn't wrong, right? The only way he can be stopped if he isn't playing. I mean, he is a star. What I've been excited to watch is, he has 12 touchdowns on the year, right? It's like only 2 behind, I think, the kid from Sierra Grande. But he has 12 touchdowns on the year, but he's averaging almost 26 yards a catch. Think about that. 26 yards a catch, right? And he's up to like 800 yards for the season. So great star there for sure.
Well, and
it's me too that, Marquise Reese and he have an incredible chemistry. And I continue to be impressed by Reese, who just goes in, week out. I just saw he was the passing leader in the state still this week. He just puts yards on the stat sheet. And, for a guy who was supposed to be, maybe a development year or a step down from, last year's player of the year, he's played phenomenally. So I think the pairing of those two guys, and Reese just getting him the ball in every situation possible, it's fun to watch. And those guys really are coming to their own here down the stretch.
And it's funny, Doug, I talked to Mountain Vista coach Garrett Looney ahead of the game, and I mentioned Marquise to him, and he turned to me and said, that kid is a year ahead of schedule. Like, we thought he was going to be okay this year. We thought it was going to be maybe a little bit of a step back, and we would kind of have to build up to where we were a year ago after, a year of maybe taking some hits and taking some losses. But Marquise has been a kid that has surprised his head coach with the way that he has come out and played. And you want to think that they're just, airing the ball out down the field, but he is making great plays. And I was able to capture, I believe it was their second touchdown of the game. on Friday night. But I mean, he's just able to find a guy in a right spot. And these are receivers who are even going out and making an additional play. So it's not like he's just completing long ball after long ball. Jermaine, you mentioned Brooklyn averaging 26 yards a catch. But I would be very, very curious to see what his yards after catch numbers are, because because they're not just taking deep shot after deep shot. They're finding open spots in the field and they're allowing their playmakers to make plays. And that was key on Friday night. I mean, I can't remember what they built that lead up to, Doug, when you texted me and said, I think that's game time. And then Valor, of course, battled back. But at the end of the day, Brooklyn Bailey ended up with 248 receiving yards. I mean, and what's funny, I went into the Chassa record books to see, does that crack your top 15, whatever in the state? And it doesn't, not in a single game. But just to have those numbers against a team like Valor, who is a very well-coached team, and maybe still a little on the young side. I don't know if this is the senior class that Valor is used to having, that just is loaded with talent across the board. So it was a huge win for Mountain Vista. Second loss in a row for the Eagles. And I want to get back into them for a minute. But when you start talking about now, we kind of have our definitive 3 teams in 5A with Cherry Creek, Ralston Valley, Mountain Vista, and then Arvada West is probably sitting there at number 4. Jermaine, how much fun are these final few weeks of the regular season going to be?
No, it's amazing, because what you start to find out is how these kids don't make mistakes, right? If you backtrack a little bit, your stats with Reese, he only has 4 interceptions on the year, right? So, 4 picks, making those different decisions, what you show in that video. I mean, that ball he put in place, he was precise. He was patient. He took his time. And that's what Coach Looney is getting into. Like, young guys typically don't have that type of patience when it comes to making plays, especially in big games like that and that type of atmosphere. But this is a time of year where coaches become great coaches, right? And I mean great coaches during the season, coaching up who they have and where they may be. I'm very excited where things are going. I mean, I know we're going to get into this a little later, but just to see some of the matchups coming out this week, I'm more elated to see, Arapahoe versus Cherry Creek. That's going to be one of those where you get very excited to see. I could tell you the Eagle Crest team is on fire right now. So watching them come up this week, but this will be that time of the year. It's always that quote unquote, as Hansen calls it on Red Zone, this is that witching hour, right, of October, where we start to watch teams, they actually make the playoffs and become playoff teams, or they put themselves out of the playoffs and they start talking about coming to see Coach Jermaine here at UPSWING because the season's over.
And it's going to be a fun final few weeks. The one thing I want to touch on in this game before we kind of look at the rest of 5A, guys, and this is from me being there and watching on the sideline. I think it's time that Mike Sanford has to establish his one person that he is going to go with at quarterback. And I think that's a tough spot for him to be in, as he's kind of set that tone to where he's had Dawson Oak play the first 2 series. And then, of course, you see Titus Heward in the third. And then I kind of lose track of what the rotation is supposed to be since then. But just knowing that they really need to have that position certified. If it's me, I'm probably going to go with Titus Heward, because I think if you're if you're Valor Christian, you might be looking for next year, 2 years down the road, with the talent that they have coming through in that junior and senior class. So, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Dawson at all, because he's done very, very good things with Valor Christian. But if I'm really looking at what that team needs, I think they need that one position solidified. You need that one guy that can be your rallying cry for the rest of the season. They will make the playoffs. Valor will make the playoffs. It's about having faith in what you're doing with your personnel moving forward. And, I have a feeling that Mike is probably going to start leaning toward making a decision to go with one quarterback. But if I'm him, I think this Mountain Vista game was probably the indicator that it's probably time to make that definitive move.
Well, I think when you have back-to-back weeks of true tests, and Valor has, I think it really reveals, kind of what the strengths of each guy is, how the team responds to their leader at quarterback in certain situations. Because when you've had the schedule that Valor's had, there's a lot of those, not just game tests, but within the game tests. And so I think that, those do allow a coach like Coach Stafford to kind of say, okay, going down the stretch, who do I feel the most confident in? Or maybe more importantly, who do the kids around him feel the most confident in? And like you said, that's not a knock on one or the other. Obviously, they're a very good football team and both have been playing well. But I think, the other part of it is that the better the competition, the more reps you want that guy under center to see from the start of the game to the end. Because if you've got two guys trying to figure it out in the first half versus one guy who figures it out in the first half and takes that into the second half, I think you have an advantage there on offense. So, yeah, I don't know that he has to, or that there's a time frame that he does, but I would expect to see that here fairly soon before the playoffs.
And I agree with both of you guys there. I haven't done that all year, so don't jump out of your seats there. But I agree with both of you. I think there's two sides of it, right? I think you have to make that decision, not now, right? I don't think that has to happen now, but it is a time that where you're getting at, Doug, where you're going to have to find who can be your hot hand in the next 4 to 5 weeks. And they still have 4 to 5 weeks to figure these things out. And let's be realistic. No knock on their next 4 opponents, but their next 4 opponents, they can still try to figure these things out, right? If they're one play, a couple points the opposite side, the one's going, hey, that's a great duo they had. They took out Mountain Vista. They're still on that winning streak. So it's still good football. The quarterbacks don't play defense. Right. So if that defense sums it up and not allow someone like Brooklyn Bailey to be running down the field, just having a 7-on-7 match, we're having a different conversation today. I was very keen to a lot of interviews I love watching, post game interviews with coaches and players at all levels of football. And one word I took away this week was execution. Right. Execution. You heard it from Jalen Hurts. You heard it all the way down to, Penn State, down to the high school level, where this time to execute, and coaches can't create that. Players have to create that. And if you look at yesterday, I mean, we're jumping on this bandwagon today here in Denver because it's in the air, this fresh air with 40-degree weather. The Broncos executed when they needed to yesterday, right? And they didn't change much. So same thing when it goes to Valor when it comes to quarterbacks. You don't have to change as many things right now as most want to think, because we're going to be the Monday morning quarterback by saying let's switch to quarterbacks, right? So I believe that they do have to look at this to sum up and have one. So I agree with both of you guys there, but I think they're in a good saddle.
Yeah, and whichever way he decides to go, I mean that's why he's the guy in that position to make that choice. But I would be able to understand both sides. If he basically said we're going to go with Dawson until we can't. He wants to put the faith in his senior quarterback and probably the rest of that senior class. I think they're probably going to rally around their guy. And if you go with Titus, you're probably more establishing that, not that you're giving up on this year, but you have a more comprehensive long-term picture in mind. And at a program like Valor, I think that is something that they very much emphasize. It's not just about winning this year, but it's about maintaining a standard that you can carry over from year to year. We're not trying to pit anyone against each other or disregard anyone's accomplishments for that. But I've kind of been on that train all year of saying, this might, if I have one criticism of Mike, it's that he's needed to establish a genuine solidified guy at that position. And I think after 2 straight losses, if you're not going to do it now, I feel like there may not be a better time. So I don't know. I would think that we would see it sooner than later.
Here's the thing though, too. Let's say that they do go down to one quarterback. I think Mike has done a great job of giving both of those guys a ton of experience, because regardless of who you go with, or if you go with one over the other, they're one play away from having that other guy need to do the exact same thing that he's going to ask either one of them. So, credit to them. It's a good problem to have 2 guys that can legitimately play at a high level at the 5A level. I mean, either one could wind up being the guy that leads them to the state championship. You just never know. So the fact that they have two guys that are capable is a great thing. And I think he's handled the situation well in that both of those guys have taken a ton of snaps. So got confidence in both and understands both of their games.
And you look at the history of Valor, right? This happens a lot at Valor, right? Everyone wants to go there to be the quarterback, right? Everyone wants to go there and be the quarterback at Valor. If you look at the history behind it, Colton Allen, the guy he was battling someone. Trey Stott became, a safety wide receiver that would become D1. Take it as far as back what you're getting at, Doug. I mean, Luke McCaffrey is now what? Catching deep balls? With Washington Commanders.
Beating the LA Chargers.
Exactly. So you have great athletes, make them great athletes when you need them to win. Right. And you're going to need them to win in the playoffs. And you come across any one of those top three you just listed, then you're going to need players, not just the quarterback. So football players bring big play opportunity. I can see them using a couple of trick plays with both of them sneaking on the field at some time and being very unique with Coach Sanford. You need that in the state championship. We know up there in Fort Collins at Canvas Stadium, we're going to see some of that from someone. So having great players would be a great opportunity. And it continues to bring competition. Like, who doesn't want to see competition within a team heading into October and not falling asleep? I tell you what, Dave Logan's over there right now. They're looking for something to have a chip on their shoulder, right? They want to. They want to say, yeah, we're going to get on our regular bus, play a regular game, and go win a regular football game. That's what speech used to be playing against Valor. And I know that because I was on the sideline coaching Valor at that time. And he would give that speech to his Creek kids, like, let's get on our regular bus, go play a regular game, and win a regular championship. And what he was trying to tell his team is say, hey, you're regular guys. They aren't. We are. Let's go win. And I'm sure Coach Sanford will have an opportunity to say, hey, those guys, over at Colorado Preps talking about splitting up these quarterbacks, we're going to use you guys. Let's show them that it's real. So they're looking for opportunities, not what you call a bulletin board, but they're looking for some chips, right, and put on some shoulders of some guys when they need to.
Well, Mike's got my cell number, so if he needs me to talk some trash so they can find some motivation I'm always happy to oblige.
He's bigger than you. I seen you standing when we did the photo shoot here. He was standing next to you. He's probably 4 inches taller than you, Dan. You might want to watch out.
I can run longer distances and sustain that speed. I'm going to hold on to that. I can run away from Mike if I need to. If we're going to look around the rest of the 5A field, and Jermaine, this is a team that you mentioned, you're excited about what they're going to do this week. But after a really slow start to the season, Arapahoe gets a big win over Grandview. Is this a team that's starting to find the form that we thought they were going to have at the beginning of the year?
Absolutely. And, I'm not cashing in my checks because you guys were waiting to get on me. I know I was speaking very highly of Arapahoe early and I stand there because what you alluded to, Doug, having that patience as a coach to get to where your team to be, that is Coach Brayton, right? That's if you know his personality, it's not his attitude from what we used to watch him being at DN at CU and Carolina Panthers. But, I mean, his statue is all about the process of young men. And they're in a great position right now. I was aware of, a couple of injuries they had going on. They had a couple of kids that were, came in, didn't start the season. And now you see that defense taking over. What you will see is the Arapahoe defense start to take hold to a lot of these games. I mean, if you look at Brody coming off the edge, he has 9 sacks this year right now. 9 sacks, 54 tackles. I mean, he has 11 Harries. Right. When you think about those Harries, they typically lead to an interception or something on the back end. So the defense is running strong. They're going to love Brody up there at Air Force Academy, his recent commit to go to the Air Force Academy and play football. I look at them putting together. The quarterback was young. This is a young quarterback. He's starting to put his feet in the ground, make the right decisions. He has some athletes, and they will, regardless of a win or loss this Friday playing against Creek, they will have the opportunity to make the playoffs and go in and match up and just stand in the middle and swing with a lot of teams.
Well, and that's one of the things I love about high school football. This isn't a poll that's trying to determine the national championship in college football 20 years ago. This is who's going to be best in November. And I think, you talk a lot about Arapahoe and a defense. I can remember back at the very first poll of the year, we all had Arapahoe in the top 10 because of that defense. But they're young, they have injuries. You never know what happens within a team, and their ascent toward the end of the year is everything. You look down the list, there's teams like Regis. I know, Jermaine, you talked a lot about them being really, really young. Well, they're probably really, really good athletes too, and it just takes them a little time to get used to the speed of the 5A game. Same thing with Columbine. Andy Lowry didn't forget how to coach football. He probably just had a younger roster, or maybe some positions in key places within his offense that just needed a little time to get up and running. Now, whether those teams fully realize their potential, that still remains to be seen. But there's a long way from start to finish in a high school football season.
Well, and Doug, you mentioned both those teams, Regis and Columbine, slow starts to the year. And like you said, they've started to figure some things out. They're on winning streaks. They're finding their groove a little bit. So they fit right in with that Arapahoe mold that we just talked about. That maybe it just took a little time, find your footing, all that. Doug, you and I were kind of discussing, how do we rank the bottom end of that 5A class? Because when you look, so many teams are kind of right in that mix. And I want to point out one more, and this might be the team, and I feel the same way. I feel like we did this with Mountain Vista early in the year. This is a team that we may not just have given enough credit to start, but Fountain Fort Carson is a very quiet, I want to say they're 5-1. And what surprises me about that, first and foremost, is that I haven't gotten text messages from Jake Novotny reminding me of that. But, but moving on, like Fountain Fort Carson is just quietly going about their business. The toughest game they played, I believe, was Arvada West. Another one like Fairview, Doug, that's the toughest talent they've seen. They're eventually going to see, I believe, a Legend and a Pine Creek. But are we seeing a little bit more parity at that bottom end than we thought there would have been at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you talk about Fountain Fort Carson, I think they remind me a little bit in some ways of Montrose in 4A. Yeah, Montrose is undefeated. They're rolling through their competition, but we never see them play any of the teams from down here. Same thing with Fountain Fort Carson. We just don't get to see the sample size. They may have a game or two, but at 5-1, they're rolling through their competition for the most part. But they're not going to see a Valor Christian or a Jeffco team or something like that likely until the playoffs. So, it's one of those things about having schools all over this really big state. Just physical distance doesn't allow you to necessarily go apples to apples on these comparisons, but it's hard not to notice what they're doing.
Yeah, Doug, I agree with you, Doug. And Dan, I know you're protecting yourself down there in the Springs area by putting this conversation out there. You want to protect your car when you go to these games, and people know where you park after games. But you have what we like to call who in the performance world. This time of year, the who and players start to show up. And we know that with Fountain Fort Carson. A lot of these kids weren't even here last year, right? They're coming, these are kids from military families. Some, they pop in, they pop out. They're learning they haven't even went to homecoming yet. They're learning where classes are, and they start to play good football. And that coach there does a great job by bringing them together every year. I've always been a high fan of Fountain Fort Carson, even on the track side. With the Lion brothers they have for years there. I mean, how they can bring these kids in for 1 or 2 years and make them very competitive in what Doug was getting to with the landscape that travels. They play who they are scheduled to play. They can't come here and just play the teams they want to play to show how good they are. But yeah, you'll start to see that with teams like this. And this is the same what we have with that bottom slew of teams between, obviously Grandview taking that loss, but you have Arapahoe, you have Arapahoe, you have Regis. You see those teams starting to make that ascent because they are actually feeling like, who are they as a team? And great coaches, when they find out who they are, they start to be able to put together the ingredients to actually cook the meal, right? Versus someone else coming in and they can't figure out what team they have. So yeah, you'll see that. Fountain Fort Carson, I believe, will shock one of those teams, later in that season that they have on that schedule. And we see this with Creek as well, right? We know this going into that fourth week, that bottom half of those teams. You look at Creek, this is usually the time when they not slip up, right? There's nothing against them. Data speaks. And, this is when the Grandview sneaks up on them or someone in their schedule and gets that loss, and everybody goes, oh, Creek isn't as good as we thought they were, and then they run into the playoffs with a chip on their shoulder. So we'll see, but that bottom half of 5A, just like in the 3A rank, you never know what's going to happen every Friday night.
Well, and I would actually even add to that, Jermaine, everything you said, and the additional piece that I would emphasize is if you take a team like Fountain Fort Carson, who, we haven't talked a lot about on this show. They get their due from obviously the local TV stations and the Gazette down in Colorado Springs. But when people start to take notice and that team continues to win, the players start to believe that they're every bit as good as what their record says. And when you instill that confidence and that belief, if we go to the pro level, the Denver Broncos very much believe they are a top team in the NFL right now because they just beat the defending Super Bowl champions. So when you add that at the high school level where I don't know what the expectations were for that team going in. That's something I'll have to ask Jake about the next time I talk to him. But if they're ahead of where they thought they would be, confidence can be a very, very deadly thing for a program like that.
Yeah, especially young people, right? We know that. And I alluded to it a second ago, the homecoming's over, right? So the homecoming dance, the homecoming weekend, guys putting on these, fake suits with sneakers just to go to the dance, that's over for coaches. They know now they can barrel down and find out what they do have. What's exciting about football at this time of the year as well is you start to see the younger players step up. Some of those guys that really weren't getting the reps, they've been getting the practices. I love my time as a high school football coach is when we had the varsity and JV together and they start to grow. And you can see some of the higher end JV kids start to make their way to be dressed out as varsity athletes, and they start to put themselves in position to learn. They also start to motivate and push that energy you're talking about, Dan, to that varsity side of things, because some of those kids start looking over their shoulder like, this kid is looking good. People loves little Sparks. Sparks is going to be playing, he's dressing. If I make a mistake, they're going to throw him in the game. So, yeah, it's a great competition era and time of the football season.
That's right. And that's going across all classifications as well. If you look at 2A, which is where I want to go next, we saw Basalt, a team that fell out of the top 10, but then they bounced back and get a big win over Delta, a team that has just found to be consistently competitive in that classification. In its first game against a 2A top 10 team, Wellington just ran away from Berthoud. I still believe that Wellington is the top team in Class 2A. And I know not all the poll votes reflect that, but that's a stance I'm more than happy to take. Strasburg edged Elizabeth. Eaton topped University, a big rivalry game between them. So kind of like we're talking about with the Arapahoes and the Regis Jesuits, are these top teams in 2A starting to find their form a little bit and starting to separate themselves?
Absolutely. And I also think, in addition to young kids getting experience and, chemistry starting to take place, I also think this is when, kind of a history of a program starts to come into the picture. You look at a team like Eaton, and I know that they beat University this week, but like Eaton's one of those schools that they just know how to win across every sport. So, you have a little success, you play a little bit better, young kids start to figure out the culture and kind of that expectation at a lot of these schools. And Eaton's not the only one. They're Holy Family is another good example. That like a school like that they know how to win. They've been there and done that. And so the longer those young kids get experience, the more they're kind of expected to, carry on that torch, so to speak. So I think later in the season and the list that you just rattled off in 2A, it really does speak to those programs that are traditionally good.
Yeah, and I'm a Strasburg lover. I tell you, I always love Strasburg. My days back with Mitchell Martin as a quarterback, and I think he's on the sideline working with some of those guys this year. Just those slingers they have down there. We had one of their local heroes here for our photo shoot this month in the Mohrmann Prep magazine. So yeah, Strasburg is one of those teams you start to see, right, in those areas where it sleeps. But you said it, Doug. I've watched Eaton on the track for years in both sports, right? And you can always tell the difference of where did the young ladies, do they run track or do they play softball as a baseball? We know the history of baseball. But, one of their, legendary athletes, Austin Eckler was an Eaton kid. And you start seeing those Eaton kids coming up, and they're very competitive every year. So I like 2A football. I mean, it's a very unique situation with that landscape it covers, and it goes back to high school rivalries, but this is town rivalries, which is wonderful. I took a trip, and I tell you, when you drive through Colorado at times, you start to see Buena Vista. I said it right. There you go, fellas. I said it right that time. You see those signs for those places, and you start like, man, this is like 2 hours away from Denver. They're playing great football out here. It's competitive. So, yeah, 2A football is definitely one of those where you can look around and go cheer a little bit for. I believe we really should be pushing those levels down there at bottom. It's not always about 5A, 4A, 5A. It's great football, great young athletes across the state.
Well, and to go back to the Strasburg kid that you had mentioned, I mean, I still think it's one of the best running back names you can possibly have, Aiden Dodge. Every time he's got every time you miss a tackle on that kid, I don't know how he doesn't have a dodged you kind of slogan going. But and to kind of piggyback off that, Jermaine, I've been thinking a lot lately about state championship events that I've covered. I was talking with the two Wheat Ridge kids that we played golf with yesterday, who were playing in the state tournament, and said I listed out every single golf course that I've covered a state tournament at, and Eagle Ranch is in the top 5. I've started thinking about the best state football games that I've worked and covered, and I still think in my top 3, and it might be number 1, was when Kent Denver hosted, or when La Junta hosted Kent Denver. And that atmosphere, that entire town was at Tiger Stadium. That was before they moved everything to CSU Pueblo and had a neutral field. If you were going to rob a bank in La Junta, that was the day to do it. Because I'm pretty sure even the cops, if they got the radio call, they would have said, yeah, guys, but it's 3rd down. We'll get to the bank later. Like, we got to see what happens on this 3rd down. You do not find that atmosphere with some of those big schools, which is why when you see kind of these teams start to separate themselves, and they're represented from all over, right? I mean, Wellington's about as far north as you're going to get in the state. Eaton's a little, not quite as far north, but a little more east. TCA is still a great team in Colorado Springs. Then you get over to the Western Slope, and you have your Deltas and your Basalts and all those teams. And it just makes for such a fun representation of what Colorado football is.
Yeah, you have that Lamar, La Junta, that Rocky Ford
steam whistle
area.
Game.
Yeah, you got the Rocky Ford area over there. I mean, if you ever go to a track meet and you look up and you see Lamar run past you, and their mascot, it says in the back, it says Savages, right? It's just, I mean, they're Savages as a mascot. Just, how awesome is that? So yeah, those areas, they have great opportunities. I mean, go watch a football game up in Gunnison, right? And you see the Palisades in the backdrop. I mean, you start to see games like that, and you're driving past and you see that. I mean, definitely down in that Delta area, get you some corn if you stop in that area. But that whole back area of Palisade is just beautiful.
Doug, what's the best venue you've seen a small town football game in?
I know you guys will probably, make fun of me for going back to the well, but I don't know if there's a better field in the state than Lloyd Gaskell Field in Lyman. It's just a great atmosphere. If you drive by it on I-70 on a Friday night, it is the quintessential look of Friday night lights. I mean, it's just the stadium just pops out of the landscape. And not only that, but it's meticulously maintained. I know just from living out in that general area, it's not all that easy to grow things evenly when you consider the elements in the wind and the weeds and the whatever. there's not a blade of grass that's out of place at Lloyd Gaskell Field in Lyman.
You take pride in your home, and you're going to get good things that happen there, right? Isn't that kind of a general theory? So, guys, I want to move on real quick, and we're going to do this. We're going to get back to the smaller schools on this next week. But for this week, I wanted to play a little game because we're about 4 regular season games away from the playoffs rolling around. And so we're starting to look at that selection and seeding index just a little more carefully each week. So I thought a great way to go through this, we're going to do this with 5A, 4A, 3A today. And then, Jermaine, after this, we're going to go ahead and let you get back to training those kids because, we need to be able to talk about them in about 5 to 7 years. So, but the first team I want to highlight in Bubble Watch, and what I said to Doug was I don't want you to see where they are in the seeding index, but I want to ask what these guys have to do over the course of these next 4 games and then tell you where they're sitting to see if that's viable, right? So first team we're going to go with is Regis Jesuit. They have Fountain, Fort Carson, Douglas County, both on the road. They are at home against Pine Creek, and then they're at Legend. Okay? On the seeding index, they sit at number 20. What do they need to do over these next 4 games to make sure they are inside that 24?
I think they have to win out before they get to Legend, because I feel like Legend is a team that's likely a little bit better. But I don't 100% understand the math behind the seeding index, but I believe if they win out, and even if they lose to Legend, they should be fine.
Yeah, I see them going 3-1. If they do 3-1, I can think, and the Legend is a 1. Definitely have to win on the road. I mean, you want to win on the road. I think they get consideration of the age of those kids, if that's even a factor, how they rank and going in. But it is Regis. They've shown to be, probable when it comes to being in the playoffs, and they can actually play a good game. So I say 3-1.
All right, let's move on to Chatfield. They are at Denver East, home against Denver South, at Arvada West, home against Columbine. They sit at number 24 in the selection index, so they are at the cut line. What needs to happen over the next 4 weeks for the Chargers to make the playoffs?
I think they got to win, and I think that's a tall task considering that schedule. I think they'd have to win out.
Yeah, I agree with Doug. I think you win out, and I think they're capable of winning out. If you look at what they've been putting together, what they have Langdon playing there, I think they win out there. They'll be fine.
All right, guys, we're going to go to Columbine. As soon as this pulls up, I mean, we obviously know that Columbine is going to have Chatfield at some point. Here we go. Sorry, schedule loading. Listen, this is the problem of doing this with one screen, fellas. Sometimes you just
beat Denver East, and that was one step. But I believe next week they play, is it Ralston Valley or Arvada West?
So they are at Arvada West next week, at Ralston Valley the week after that, home against Denver South, and then at Chatfield.
Mm-hmm.
They got to win one of the 2 games that they shouldn't. They've got to beat either Ralston Valley or Arvada West. And again, that's a tough ask, because I think if they go 2-2, my guess is that they will not have a good enough indicator score to make it.
Yeah, I say 2-2. I believe I agree with Doug there. I think 2-2 goes, and this is a part of who you are is going to come in to play. In regards to placing them, they are Columbine, right? I mean, we know that, and that coach has not forgotten how to coach. And I think 2-2 would get them in. Now, it may get them in, and they may be playing. We see that second round of a big game on paper, right? When you see a name like a Columbine versus Legend in the second round of playoffs, some sort of. So yeah, I believe 2-2 would get them in, but it's going to have to be a very competitive 4 games, period. If they take a L on one of these games and it's just, it's a big woodshed type of game for them, and they're on the opposite side of that, I don't think that goes well for them. I hate to say that. It's not being disrespectful to Columbine, just looking at the data. I don't think they get in if they lose one of those games really big.
Al, I mean, the good thing about the selection seeding index and RPI and max preps rate. Well, max preps ratings might factor that in a little bit, but margin of victory, I do not believe is a very strong indicator. So,
well, that's what I was going to ask. I think a little bit of this in clarification for both, our readers and me, to be quite honest, what are the real factors? Because to say, hey, you played good against this team, but you lost, I don't know that really matters. So you have to pull some upsets along the way. Even if you do, we talked about Regis's kind of season finale with Legend. If they lose by 1, does it matter that if they lose by 20? I don't think that it does, but maybe you can clarify that.
Well, so I know RPI takes into account 25%. I believe it's 25, 50, 25. 25% your winning percentage, 50% your opponent's winning percentage, and then 25% your opponent's winning percentage. Right. So that actually does bring me to
it doesn't matter. The eye test doesn't really matter.
Right. For max preps ratings, that is, I know a lot of ADs want to go to heavier on the max preps ratings when it comes to playoff selection, because they'll see that it's probably a better representation of how things should be seeded out. I do not know what goes into all that. That's something that I do need to look into a little bit more as we go through this, but there has been talk that they do want to shift more to that. So I do think something like a margin of victory may have some role in it. I'm not quite sure how much. And every athletic director tells me it's tough to go to the max preps ratings because it's really tough for people to define what it is. So, but from the RPI standpoint, this does bring me to our last team. Castleview sits at 3-3. And right now, I believe they're at 27th in the seeding index. And their final 4 games, this is where things could get tricky, especially with this RPI factor, because strength of schedule matters. Valor Christian, Rock Canyon, Thunder Ridge, Mountain Vista.
Yeah, I mean, if you beat 2 of those teams, you're probably in.
Yeah, just and you're benefiting by playing 3 of those 4 right now.
Right, and that's where playing tough opponents should help you, especially if you're in theory, if they were to go 2-2, I believe that puts them at 500 on the season. Maybe that's not a playoff percentage that most people would think of, but when you consider the competition, there's some merit behind that index.
Yeah, I agree. Two wins there definitely needed, and just surviving that in general, right? I mean, you're going to go against 2 top 5 teams there, Mountain Vista and Valor. Them surviving that, it's not unfortunate the eye test doesn't matter, because obviously I know how that works. But let's think about the committee and what they're looking at when they do look at these type of games. How do they play in those 2 games, right? If it doesn't make a difference, I mean, we really want to be honest and truthful to it. It does make a difference, right? And are they hot? Did they lose those 2 games to by 1 point at each one of those games? I mean, so I would say 2-2. And you never know. I mean, this is the time of the year where upsets happen. We know that in high school football, because kids start to get a little lax and looking for the weeks to come and fall back. So I'll say 2-2 for sure.
All right, we're going to move down to 4A. That's it for our 5A bubble watch. Down in 4A, a team that's sitting just outside that I can't even imagine how much of a boost a playoff appearance would do for this team. But Wide Field is right there on the cusp, guys, and they play in a league that last year was very, very tough. They got their rivalry game out of the way this weekend. They lost to Mesa Ridge 41-0, but they sit at 2-4. And remaining on their schedule is Falcon, which has shown to probably be a winnable game. They're at Pueblo West, which is going to be tough. They're at Montrose, which is going to be tough. And then they're at home in the regular season finale against a struggling Doherty team. If they get wins over Falcon and Doherty, can that 4-6 record get them in?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you got to beat one of the teams that is a lock for the playoffs. So a 4-6 record, to me, just from an outsider standpoint, not having watched a ton of their action, I don't think it gets you in when you never beat one of the best teams. Obviously, you mentioned the win over Mesa Ridge. That's one, but I think you need to have more than one, quote unquote, good win on the season.
Yeah, I agree. From outside in, it's really tough, not name dropping, but this is a podcast, so I might as well throw it out where you can. But I tell you, a buddy of mine, his name is Kevin Saltchuk. He's the father of Gavin and Gabe Saltchuk, and he always says, Yes. Gabe is running the Florida State, Seminoles there as well. He always says, Jermaine, you can't say one bad thing about a kid. I've never heard you. He's tried to, and jokingly, but it's just tough to see them make it. I don't see them making it going in if they don't win out. I think they have to win out, and as Doug alluded to, beat one of the bigger teams on that list that you just mentioned. If not, 3-1 and losing one, but they're gonna have to beat one of those teams, unfortunately, to get in there.
Okay, so that adds to another fun conversation, because if we go to their district rival, Mesa Ridge, who just got a win over Whitefield on Saturday, they also sit at 2-4. They have the same 4 teams left on their schedule. They sit at number 18 in the selection index. So right now they're in the playoffs, but just seeing what's happened with the Grizzlies, I think 2-2 is a very realistic ask of them over the course of these next 4 games. So if you're Mesa Ridge and you're 4-6, are you in if you're sitting at number 18 right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same conversation. So there's no need to belabor it. You got to beat someone you shouldn't. You got to be better than what you've been. So I think that applies to Mesa Ridge also.
Yeah, keeping the theme going, like old Nick Saban used to say, mediocrity, right? I mean, mediocre versus high achievers. I mean, if they're going to be in the playoffs, they can't continue to have mediocre play. So they're going to have to win out. I mean, you can't expect to be in the playoffs if you're not that team to do it. If you're 4-6 and you make the playoffs, you can't, you're not hammering at someone's door like, why you didn't put us in? It's like they didn't take care of the business when they had to. So I would say win out.
Okay. Let's go to our friend Jaron Cohen over at Ponderosa. The Mustangs are 3-3. They are at home for the next 3 games: Highlands Ranch, Golden, Bear Creek. They finished the season at Heritage. Like I said, they're 3-3, and they sit at number 21.
It seems like they should go at least 3-1 in that remaining schedule, maybe with Heritage being the toughest opponent left. Yeah, 3-1. I think you got to go 3-1.
Yeah, I love dining in Parker, so I'm going to represent right because I don't want those Pondo kids after me. I say they win all 4 games. I really do. I think they take hold and they win 4 games, and they have a big blast at the end by beating Heritage, which would be a great win for them.
That would be a great win.
Great win for them going into the playoffs. I think this is one of those teams where in the beginning of the year we had them there and they kind of slacked. But 3-3 is a big difference. If they win all out and they go 7-3, I mean, you're looking at a different team, right? I mean, that's a different team going in. So I say they win all 4 games.
All right, so we now go to Loveland, another 2-4 team, guys. Their schedule is a little bit easier. I say a little bit easier than the Whitefield Mesa Ridge situation. So they are at home against Monarch. They're at Silver Creek, home against Greeley West, and they're at Hooter. And they currently sit at number 27. So if they win all 4, they get to what would that be, 6-4? Do they get in? Loveland is a traditional playoff team, a team that's usually in the state title mix every few years.
They do, I think, if they go 4-0, and they should. I do look back to, this might be just a down year for them, and the fact that they're going to have to beat the teams that quote unquote aren't as good. Maybe they sneak in, but I don't see them going as far. Like you said, they are a traditional powerhouse. I don't know that they have the horses or the seniority this year. I mean, I think back to that game they played against Thompson Valley, and Thompson Valley just rolled them. And that wouldn't normally be the case. So I kind of look at that as my eye test. Obviously, Thompson Valley is very good, but also smaller. So, I think that they have to win out. And even then, the strength of schedule portion of that calculation doesn't help them a ton.
Yeah, I agree with Doug there. I think they have to win out there. And this is a great opportunity for coaches, right, of all these teams we're talking about right now. It's that pretending or becoming. Are you pretending to be a playoff team, or are you becoming a playoff team by winning out and having that every week is a playoff game, right? So I say they win out, and that may not get them in, but at least when you start looking at the side of what it does for a team that's growing like that and going into the offseason, win out to continue to grow. So I say, yeah, take all 4.
All right, we're gonna slip down to 3A. We're gonna finish this off with 4 teams on bubble watch. Guys, if the 3A playoffs started today, Thompson Valley's out. Your defending state champion, who is, I believe, 4-1 on the season, is out. They sit at number 17. Left on their schedule is home against Severance. They go to Mountain View. They're at home against Fort Morgan. And then maybe the toughest finishing stretch that you can have, they are at Roosevelt and at Pomona. Guys, could the defending 3A state champions miss the playoffs?
They could. I mean, even if they go 3-2, they could still miss. There are like a lot of other teams on their list. I think you have to beat one of those 2 teams that you're not supposed to. And, you know, I don't know. You look at those last 2 games, and that's another big ask.
Well, just like we see this every year, Kansas City Chiefs, they seem to lose 1 or 2 games and everyone wants to throw them out for the season, and they get in the playoffs and they just win, right? So with a team like, you know, Thompson Valley was speaking of, they are the champions. I mean, they are been in that champion conversation. Let's get a run going, right? Let's win every game. I think they would have to win out, and they may not get in with winning out. But I think that if they do win out, it's unfortunate with the consideration again, because who they are and what they have, they're natural. But I think if they win out, they have opportunity to get in higher. If they drop a game, I don't think so. If they drop a game.
Pueblo South, we had Coach Ryan Goddard on the program a few weeks ago. They sit at number 15. They're at home against Palmer. They go 2. They all play in Dutch Clark Stadium. They have Pueblo Centennial. They're at home against Harrison. And then they're at Lewis Palmer and home against Discovery Canyon. They are sitting at 3-2 on the season. So let's say you beat Palmer and Pueblo Centennial, not the strongest teams they have on the schedule. What do you have to do over that final 3-game stretch with Harrison, LP, Discovery Canyon?
I think you got to win 2 out of 3, and that's just math. I think if you do that math, I think they're in. And that, you know, as you alluded to at the top of the show, 3A is just the Wild Wild West. Like everybody's strength of schedule is probably, you know, I know it's not, but it feels like the strength of schedule for darn near every school in 3A should be about the same because there is so much parity there.
Yeah, I agree with you, Doug, and I'm going to stop agreeing with you. I'm going to go first next time so you can say you agree with me one time. Obviously, two wins there out of that 3. They have to have it. I mean, it's such a wild, like you said, wild up and down all around A, you know, out of our 5As that 3A is. So I'll say 2 or 3. If they don't, I don't think they get in. It's unfortunate because such a great team, right? I mean, great coach and great team, winning rivalry games like we've seen. Maybe it brings up the question of expanding a little bit. Have they thought about that?
The 3A playoffs, I believe, are going to 24 teams next year.
There you go.
So that's already a done deal. As are the 2A football playoffs. That's gonna put me on a soapbox, though. We'll get to that next year. Guys, we move up 1 spot. I watched some Tinmouth Cubs make birdie on number 2 to start the 3A golf tournament, but their football team's in a little bit of trouble. They sit at number 14, 1 spot ahead of the Pueblo South Colts. Guys, don't think things are not easy for the Cubs as they go forward. They are at Meade this week. They're at Niwot next week. They're at home against Windsor. Then they get Greeley Central and Northridge to finish off the year. Going 3-2 is probably the likely scenario, but Jermaine, you want to go first. Do they have to go at worst 3-2?
At worst, 3-2. I believe so. At worst, 3-2. Tough games. I mean, if you look at those teams and where we were in the rankings with the names that you put on there, I mean, those are some tough games, and some teams are catching fire. I mean, with Niwot doing, stepping up and starting to put some things together there, that's very interesting to say that as a track program, everything. I mean, as a football program, everything you hear there is about track and cross country. But yeah, I think that's 3-2 at worst, and keeping their fingers crossed.
Well, I'd be curious to see if they didn't go 3-2, but they beat Meade. What would that do in terms of a calculation? Because that would be the toughest game on their schedule. They, naturally, I would think they'd get the most points for beating the best team. Could they go 2-3 if one of those wins was against that team?
Maybe. I mean, all I know, Dougie, is you just ensured I'm going to get a text message from Windsor AD Eric Johnson after you just said that Meade's the toughest team in that stretch. So appreciate that. When he calls, I'm just going to put you on the phone. So, guys, Lewis Palmer sits at number 16. So as of today, they are a playoff team. They will go to Harrison. They're at home against Palmer. They go to Discovery Canyon, and then they finish off the season at home against Pueblo South and Pueblo Centennial. Rangers are 2-3 right now, guys. How do they stay in that cut line?
Must win out. Must win out. Especially when you talk about those type of games, right? Because each one of these games you've lined up, I mean, if they lose one, then they're going into the next one. These are kids we're talking about. They're not going to say, okay, we have to go 2-3. They have to win every week because you think about their personalities and their energy and their buy-in if they go 2-4 or 2-5 and trying to win the last 3 out. So I think they must win out because you win one, you can win the next one. The next one bring. So I think a team like that, especially having rivalry games, right? I mean, how hot are those rivalry games between those Springs teams that they're going to face? I mean, if you lose one or two of those, I mean, that puts you in a bad spot. So I say win out.
Well, and I think one of the pieces of the puzzle that you kind of need to consider is who are their 2 wins against. Because if they were against really good teams, then maybe they don't quite have to win out. But if they were against, the also-rans of the class, then they probably do have to win out.
Well, and what could be interesting is let's just take that Pueblo South game. That could actually be a game that determines a playoff berth for the winner of that team.
Winner goes, yeah, sure.
So that's part of the fun that we get to see over the next few weeks. We'll continue to track Bubble Watch. We'll look at some of the smaller classifications next week and get into that. But guys, I think we're at the end of our football rope, but there's some big games as always going on this week. I may make my way down to exit number 128 off I-25 to check out Fountain Fort Carson and Regis Jesuit on Thursday. Durango Palmer Ridge. If I can get a chance to put my eyes on the Demons, I think I'm going to take that opportunity. And then in 6-man, we have I believe it's a 2 versus 3 matchup between Cheyenne, Wells, and Eads. Those are the big games on my radar. Dougie, what's got your attention this week?
Well, we talked about them a little bit earlier in the show, but I want to watch Columbine and I want to watch Arapahoe because both of those teams had real tough starts to the season. They've both won 3 in a row, I believe. And so they've got real tests this week. Columbine plays number 4, Arvada West. So if I don't necessarily, have to see him win, but I have to see him be able to play toe to toe with them at least to some extent. If they can, then I think that's an important game that could determine the shape of, kind of the lower seeding in 5A. Same thing with Arapahoe. Arapahoe has the toughest test of anybody this week as they play Cherry Creek. So if Arapahoe can slow down the Bruins, I think we can safely say, yes, they belong, and yes, they have come a long way from the start of the season. So those 2 games, Columbine A West and Arapahoe Cherry Creek, those are must watch for me.
Jermaine?
Well, Doug, you just been stealing my day. I have to come join you on the golf course and have lunch with you or something. You're just stealing my day. So, yeah, definitely Arapahoe Cherry Creek. I want to see that. I want to see that live right there on the field in the end zone and watch how that goes down for multiple reasons. I would like to see how the defense, if they slow down the Bruins and exactly the skill guys to see how that works. I don't know exactly who they play. Excuse me if I don't, but I want to see Eagle Crest this week too. I want to go see Eagle Crest if I can. I know I like to jump around the games, first half, second half, things of that nature, especially I'm going to see the Bruins. You know how that goes with those games. They can either be a good game and you stay there or be a game where you're leaving early. But hopefully they're not leaving early for Arapahoe's sakes as well as good football. But I would like to see Eagle Crest just to see eye test. I mean, on paper, we see what's happening there quietly, right? We quietly see what's happening there. So that's 2 games I would like to go see.
They have Cherokee Trail this week. And if you want to have a little bit of fun next week, Cherry Creek.
Yes.
So winnable game with Cherokee Trail this week. And then next week they are at the Stutler Bowl. And that should be a really big test to see what the Raptors are made of. So Jermaine, what's going on at Upswing that's got you so excited about between now and when you're able to get out and watch some football on Friday?
We're very excited this week just to have the young people through the door. And I know each week I talk about an event, but today I just want to talk about the mission, right? And being consistent. I think so many times when you deal with youth and you're around kiddos, it's very easy to concentrate only on the big items versus consider the big items. And this week we're just focused on concentrating on every kid that walks through the door and loving them up and being very involved with them. It's kind of like the school days when you have the parent teacher conference, right? So this week at UPSWING, we're looking just to pull each kid and the parents to the side and just say, how are you? What are you doing? How can we help you? That's we're very excited this week. And so much in performance and in sports, it's always about that alpha and win and losses and everything we've talked about today, right? It's like competition. But this week we're excited just to reach down and find out who our clientele is, who our family is. So we're going to spend some time with just having conversations about kids. If you're interested in stopping by and volunteering as well, if you're adults or kids, you want to come, you need someone just to talk to, you can obviously pull up on us at 7460 South University or go to our website at upswingfoundation.org and give us a call, and we would love to have you here.
Thanks so much, Jermaine. And I'm going to send you away with this parting thought. As I was getting text messages praising your thoughts and overall perspective on 2A football. So hey, we've got the important people watching the show. I'm going to tell you that.
Yeah, I love those areas. Hey, I've been to track meets down at Lyman as well. We used to, as Lutheran track coach, we were down there at Lyman, and those are some beautiful track meets. And people treat you well there too as a track meet. They would feed the coaches inside the school, which doesn't happen all the time at track meets. I can tell you that. But yeah, I love those areas. I've been an avid speaker down there in Lamar in Rocky Ford area. Obviously, my community work for years. It put me in position to love those areas that they matter as well. It's not about the W's, the L's, but the loves and kids. They have their wins every day in those areas as well.
Yeah, get you some cantaloupe and watermelons when you go down to Rocky Ford. The Melineers, and that yes. They come by that name, honestly. So, Jermaine, thanks so much, buddy. We look forward to chatting another big week of football with you in 7 days.
I see you. Watch your head out there, Doug. Make sure you.
I'm on it. Four. I'm listening.
4 left.
See ya.
Take it easy.
Later. We've got Dougie. We're going to try and get through some news notes and other ends on the high school sports landscape here. Regular season wraps up in a few more sports, and we just still have some great things going, and we're going to get into that right after this.
This is Tim Anderson of Gordon Insurance, and we are proud to support all of our area athletes. With offices in Lyman, Callahan, Flagler, Sterling, and Kit Carson, we offer all types of insurance, including home, auto, commercial, farm, crop, life, bonds, and workman's compensation. We are independent and thus can offer you multiple choices of companies, not just one. Call or visit the office near you, and one of our agents can take care of you. See all of our contact information by going to www.gordonins.com or call me at 719-740-1361.
Look closely, and you'll see adventure, discovery, even a little mud. These 4x4s provide the muscle, tech, and durability needed to go anywhere. The Ford Bronco and Bronco Sport. It's time to see Ford in a new light. Be winter ready with 0 down leases on a 4-wheel drive Bronco for just $439 or a Bronco Sport for just $369.
Doug, we've been talking about it now for a couple of weeks. Golf is the start of fall state championship season. Of course, we also have some boys tennis. The team tournament has been going on for a while. We're down to semifinals. We'll get to that in a second. But this week we'll wrap up the regular season play for both girls softball and flag football before they dive into the postseason. State softball will be competed at Aurora Sports Complex, where it traditionally is great venue for that tournament. I love getting up there every year. And then on the October 25th, the same Saturday as state softball, flag football will crown its second group of state champions at Trailblazer Stadium in Lakewood. So as we get into this, I'm just trying to figure out if there are any particular storylines that are capturing our attention with it. For me, I have to look toward Eaton softball because this could be one of the first programs to be hit with the dominant program jump in classification. Of course, if you win 3 out of 4 championships and you reach the semifinals in the most recent year, you're going up a classification. So we could see this as the last year or as the final year of this current makeup that Eaton could be competing in 3A softball. The only team that has a chance to beat them is if Cheyenne Mountain Boys Golf captures the state championship tomorrow. But we're going to start to see that dominant program bylaw come into effect. So I'm very, very curious to see how this plays out with Eaton softball. But is there anything over the next few weeks that has your attention in terms of these two sports?
Well, there's a couple. You mentioned that, softball and flag football take place on the same weekend. And last week we talked about legends Lucy Thompson, who leads not just her team in both sports, but the state in both sports in various statistical categories. So I'm curious to see if legend happens to make it far enough in both sports. Where will Lucy Thompson be? And can she pull off sort of the Deion Sanders of Colorado high school sports? Can she be in both? That would be a story. So I want to keep my eye on that. The other one, I think, is you look at Mountain Vista flag football. I mean, you talk about a dominant program, and we talk about Mountain Vista's win on the boys' side here earlier in the show, but, you've got Braylon Looney, who's kicking for the boys and putting up monster numbers, leading the state in touchdown, or leading the team in touchdowns on the flag football side. But then you look at Ariana Key. I mean, a tremendous player that was the player of the year last year. This program hasn't lost. They don't know how to lose. So just can they keep that up? I think if they can, they should be considered with the great teams across all sports in Colorado sports history.
Yep, they have that undefeated run, and that would be a spectacular way to end that season with a state championship. We're going to hit some news and notes around the state. Boys tennis team championship semifinals are set in both classifications. Regis Jesuit and Fossil Ridge will go at it in one end, while Cherry Creek takes on Valor Christian. That's in the boys semifinals. In 4A, it's Kent Denver against the Evelyn, and then Colorado Academy will take on Peak to Peak. Those state tennis titles, the team championships, I believe, will be competed for on October 21st at Denver Tennis Park, the indoor complex right there across the highway from the University of Denver. So big week for the boys. And of course, in that time, they'll also get through the individual state championships with 5A boys being competed at City Park in Denver. 4A boys will head to Pueblo at Pueblo City Park. 4 girls volleyball teams remain undefeated at this point in the season, Doug, and that's important because we've got about 3 to 4 weeks left in the regular season. Montrose, a big one. They actually took a road trip to the Front Range to play the Village, who was the defending 3A champion, and then also University, who is a very, very good team in that 4A classification. They beat the Bulldogs in 5 sets, and then they swept the Village. The Red Hawks are still undefeated, and they look to be the top team in 4A right now, which would be a lot of fun. Battle Mountain, another Western Slope team. We drove right by that campus on the way out here to Eagle Ranch. And then Resurrection Christian is the only other undefeated team that I saw, and they're playing in 3A. But anything jumping out to you at that point, just in terms of how much fun that volleyball? Oh, Berthoud is also an undefeated team. Forgot the Spartans. We just wrote about them, courtesy of Brian Miller at ColoradoPreps.com. But how much clutch has to be in you at this point of the year to still be an undefeated team, especially in some of the either tournament play or league teams that these squads are seeing?
I think it's good and bad. I mean, I think when you talk about a team that's undefeated going into a state tournament, they obviously have an edge, and I think it makes them keep their edge. On the flip side, a team that's that good and takes an unexpected loss ahead of the playoffs can learn a lot from that. And I think that goes across every sport. But when you have that kind of success and then all of a sudden it gets taken away from you, you learn really quickly. You remember really quickly what got you there in the first place. So it's interesting to see how programs kind of handle that type of success. But, when there's multiple undefeated teams going into state in a sport, it sure makes for good drama.
Yep. Absolutely. It's going to be a fun couple weeks to watch in those sports. Another fun one to watch over the next few weeks is the boys soccer landscape. I encourage everyone to check out coloradopreps.com. Our friend Brent New had a great write-up about some of the league races that are going to be decided over the course of the next few weeks. I mean, there's going to be a lot of competitive soccer being played in all 4 classifications. So be sure to check out that story at coloradopreps.com. Doug, we're right in the midst of it. You and I are going to shut our computers and get back out on the golf course to watch these kids. Play is underway at all 4 boys golf state tournaments. We'll have an overall roundup at the end of the day on coloradopreps.com. And then tomorrow you can find full coverage of all 4 sites. Our friend Courtney Oakes at the Aurora Sentinel is out at 5A. Brent New will be tackling all the action at 4A at Fox Hill. Dougie, you and I are here at Eagle Ranch. And then at 2A at Elmwood and Pueblo is going to be our friend James Noakes. So a lot of golf coverage over the next couple of days at coloradopreps.com. And Doug, we're going to wrap it up as always with our standouts and letter winners from the last week. And we talked about Montrose volleyball, but I'm going right to Montrose football because Elijah Womack is one of the best running backs in the state, might be the best running back in the state. He ran for 4 touchdowns and was over 200 rushing yards just on his touchdown runs. The Red Hawks beat Falcon 57-6 on Friday. They come to, I believe it's Doherty on Saturday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon at Gary Berry Stadium. I'm probably going to make my way over and check out Elijah firsthand to see what he's made of.
Well, you mentioned them earlier in the program, but Eaton softball is a dominant program. But one of the reasons that they are is Kinsey Brady. I mean, you look at what she's done. She's pitched in 5 games, and 3 of them. 3 of them. 3 out of 5 are no hitter. I mean, that's like video game stuff. You just don't you don't see that kind of stat anywhere. It makes me give a double take to it. So shout out to Kinsey Brady.
And then we're going to wrap it up. My hometown, Chloe Bresnahan, Manitou Springs Cross Country. Doug, the Mustangs went to the Thunderstorm Invite down in Pueblo. They were the only 3A team running at the event, and Bresnahan walked away the winner. She was a top finisher at the state tournament. The Mustangs actually had 3 out of 4, or 4 out of 5, I believe, of the top finishers. This is a team that's looking to dethrone TCA as the 3A girls cross country state champions. They've got a shot to do it. It would be a great boost for that program for head coach Andy Sherwood. He's put in a lot of work. So, and of course, like I said, they're my hometown guys. So you got to give some love to the hometown kids. We gave you brought in someone from North Glen a couple weeks ago. So I figured it was only appropriate that
maybe your Stangs can move up in our annual high school rankings in February.
Yeah, I mean, we got to start an annual bet on North Glen versus Manitou to see who ends up higher. So that's going to do it for us today. We're excited to get out and watch some golf. I want to thank Jermaine Stafford as always, Danny Bailey calling all the shots, man. Thanks for all your input and everything that you do with us, Dougie. It's going to be fun. We've got a fun day of golf and then another great week ahead of high school sports.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody, whether you're, a casual golf fan or follow it closely, definitely check out the coverage that all your guys over at Colorado Preps are giving to state golf, because if nothing else, skim the article and see what these kids are shooting. It is unreal. As you mentioned, we went out and played with a couple kids from Wheat Ridge yesterday, and they're just really, really good golfers. And, you start to think, oh, geez, I've played this game for the bulk of my life. Here's these kids that are just coming into their own physical peak, and they're just really, really solid players and really, to be honest, kind of humble you. So it's a great sport. These tournaments are really, really well put on. And the coverage that you guys have at Colorado Preps right now is off the charts. And especially when you just look down the scores and you're just like, wow, this is amazing.
And Doug, I'm going to make you feel a little bit better because we played the course yesterday. I think between the two of us, we might have mustered up 1 birdie. And as we stand right now, Mullins, Jackson Beldy, senior, 5 under through 7.
Wow.
So we're 7 holes in. We've got a 59 watch on, which means we got to get rolling. We got to get out of here. So for Danny Bailey, Doug Ottewill, Jermaine Stafford, I'm Dan Mohrmann. We'll see you guys next week on the Colorado Prep Show presented by UPSWING.
With millions of page views every year, ColoradoPreps.com is the #1 source for the high school sports community to keep up with the latest news and scores. From football and volleyball to basketball and softball, ColoradoPreps.com provides a year-round hub for coaches, friends, and family to stay connected to their favorite schools and athletes, and keep an eye on their rivals. Covering high school sports from the peaks to the plains, you always get the latest at ColoradoPreps.com.